Green algae is a widely available and abundant natural resource. It is farmed and produced as food, used as a biofuel, air filter, and a dietary supplement. While in its natural habitat, it contributes to over 50% of the world's oxygen levels, and it helps support marine life while promoting a healthier marine ecosystem. However, there are also many other types of algae that are equally harmful as they are beneficial to the environment. They are naturally occurring and are simultaneously damaging to our natural environment. Algal blooms are an example of this. They come in the form of an overgrowth of green algae. Algal blooms kill marine life, release toxic gas, and deplete oxygen. In 2018 alone, there have been over 50 cases worldwide of saltwater algal blooms. In China, algal blooms happen frequently, with one of the worst in history taking place in Qingdao, with over 20,000 tons collected. Can we find an alternative use for this algae? What if algae could be used as a viable structural material? Could this then guide a new architecture suitable for a world struggling to tackle the depletion of its primary resources? What if this long, fibrous material could somehow find its way in our structures and buildings to create a new design language? Within the UK, the algae industry is well established. Algae is harvested along the coasts of England and Ireland. Over 20 million tons of green algae is growing on the shores, and around 5 million tons are collected via wild harvest. Our research begins on the Seven Sister Cliffs. Through hand collection, we were able to obtain a substantial amount of green macroalgae to perform our research and experimentation. Our material's biodegradability is a key property in relation to its use within a sustainable economy. After compression and curing, the resulting block can be reintegrated into the water, reintroducing it into the ecosystem. The result of the compression and curing of the green algae was a solid, lightweight block. Through a unique chemical reaction occurring in the polysaccharides and amino acids present in algae, the compression and curing of this material results in self-adhesive properties that bind the fibers together. The process of making the brick consists of making a mold, placing the algae within the mold, compressing it, and baking it. With mass production of the blocks in mind, we experimented with different forms, such as a tile, a stick, a sheet, and more organic forms consisting of curves. The direction we pressed the algae, combined with the time spent in the kiln, resulted in different variations of texture. We needed to connect these blocks in order for them to become a viable structural element. Mortar immediate fastenings were considered. Male and female components were tested that accentuated the texture of the material and further pushed the application of this block into more structural and architectural territory. Elements of porosity and transparency were explored, taking advantage of the textures that we found during our research and explorations. As our research further developed, we realized that algae needed an aggregate in order to perform a more structural role. The idea of a fiberboard materialized. We approached this idea with the traditional process of fiberboard manufacturing and fabrication in mind. We conducted a study on how this fiberboard is able to be applied in design. Through an interlocking system, fiberboard blocks became a feasible option in designs. Additionally, the fiberboard components could come in a variety of shapes, interlocking with one another to form an aggregate structure. Clay provided the solutions we needed in order for green algae to become a feasible structural material to be applied in architecture. In addition, clay is a naturally derived material and aligns with our goal to keep our material as sustainable as possible. Through extensive experimentation, we created many different iterations of the algae and clay block. We combined different types of crushed algae in the form of varying lengths of fiber with the clay to test both its visual aesthetic and strength. As our research concluded, we started to apply these blocks into architectural application. We explored the idea of cylinders, playing with ideas of layering and textural gradients. using varying amounts of algae combined with clay. Additionally, more complex and organic forms derived from the shape of a cylinder were also explored. These forms came from the concept of using algae as a way to determine indentations and other articulations in the cylinder. The textural explorations also resulted in ideas mimicking the visual effects of rammed earth. By cutting away at different directions of geometry, we were able to expose different textures. Could this material exploration develop into something people can use, touch, and experience? The proposal is an eco-village. For us, the location of this eco-village felt appropriate in China. As a country that is plagued by algal blooms yearly, the country has a hard time determining what to do with the excess algae. This particularly rings true in the province of Ningbo. Being in close proximity to the worst algae bloom event in Chinese history in Qingdao, the province also has a strong connection with green algae, as it is one of its primary exporters and producers. What makes this village special is its only established industry of aquaculture. In addition, it neighbors an algae laboratory in the next village. Shuwen is a company that specializes in promoting different uses for algae. They are currently involved in creating a new species of algae that helps filter water pollution. However, after being used as a filter, it becomes unfit for any other use. What we propose is to use this excess algae in our design and construction of the eco-village. The existing land use of Baiyutun village is mostly taken up by cultivated farmland. A smaller percentage of developed land can be seen further north. Various factories are scattered in the outlying areas. The low and high tide dictates how the village uses its space. We wanted the eco-village to connect heavily with the existing fabric and culture of Baiyutun. The proposal is a unique experience for outsiders to have a glimpse of daily life in the village. The design would be driven by the process of harvesting algae, taking advantage of the existing aquaculture infrastructure in the village. The program of the eco-village changes with the tide as it rises and lowers. During low tide, this gives users the opportunity to take part in wild harvest, while during the high tide, users are able to travel by boat to experience aqua farming. As the day winds down, the algae is processed into food products or souvenirs from the collected algae. The users take part in communal cooking and a feast. The design language of our eco-village is materially focused. It highlights the beauty of the combination of algae and clay. An integrated systematic approach is taken to determine the efficient distribution of algae and clay. Through structural analysis and analyzing a geometry's thickness, we were able to determine the ideal mixture and amount of algae and clay for each area. For example, in a geometry's thicker portions, the mixture would consist more of clay than algae due to the need for more structure in the thicker areas. For the thinner and finer parts of the geometry, algae would be a more suitable option as it is more flexible and porous than clay. The forms we generated are based on a generative design approach. Through this approach, we were able to optimize a starting geometry and shed all of its excess weight, until all that is left are the necessary components to withstand a certain amount of structural load. Our final development of this process was the idea of flocking, a simulation technique that mimics swarming particle behavior, which we then used as a path for our geometry to follow. Pavilion-like structures were explored as an appropriate architecture for the eco-village, experimenting with the integration of these three languages. The open-air nature of these structures are juxtaposed with the intricate network of algae and clay working together. As we progressed, we began applying this language into housing typologies, taking inspiration from traditional Chinese courtyard housing. Moving forward, our direction is to create both public and private building types that use our design language in order to create a thriving and unique eco-village for visitors and locals alike.